Hi, I'm Erica. I'm a home barista, a coffee enthusiast, and I love latte art. Today's video is going to be about how to make an espresso, and I'll also share some troubleshooting around dialing in. First, let's talk about what espresso is. It's a concentrated form of coffee where you force hot water with high pressure over finely ground beans. It's actually a brewing method and can be served in different ways, but most commonly espresso by itself is either a single or a double. Brew ratio is the proportion of coffee to espresso. In this video, I'll show you with a 1:2 brew ratio, which is 1 part coffee to 2 parts espresso. Time is a really important part of espresso since it impacts the overall taste. Too short of a run time means that the water did not spend a lot of time in contact with the beans, and this means under extracted. And too long of a time with the coffee in contact with the water means over extracted. So we want to aim for something that's more balanced. For me, I like to aim for about 38 to 40 seconds for a single shot and closer to 50 seconds for a double shot. Let's get our materials next. So you'll need your espresso machine with your tamper, a coffee grinder, a distribution tool like a toothpick or WTT, which is a Weiss distribution tool, a digital scale with measuring weight and time, an espresso mug that is about 2 to 4 ounces, some good coffee beans, a notebook with your pen or pencil, and a clean bar towel. Make sure you choose beans that are freshly roasted. This gives a good balance of body and crema in your shot, which is the foam on the top. And that comes from high pressure and the release of the carbon dioxide from the beans. Older beans tend to create espresso with less crema because the carbon dioxide escapes slowly over time. I like to open up my bag of beans within about a week of roasting and try to use them within a month of the roast date. Next, let's talk about our recipe. There's 3 major variables that affect the way your espresso tastes. Dose, which is 16 grams, and that's how much ground coffee you use. Yield is 36 grams, that's the size of the espresso that we want. And time, which is how long you run. And for this recipe, I like to aim for 38 to 40 seconds. If I divide 16 by 36, I get 2.25. So this means that the brew ratio I'm going to use is 1 part coffee to 2.25 parts espresso. I think any recipe close to 1:2 is good. It's always good to keep track of how your shots run. So I would grab a notebook and make 4 columns: in grams, out grams, time in seconds, and a notes column. You can use this for either how it tasted or what beans you roasted and when they were roasted. One thing to remember is that if you get your beans from the same roaster, you'll still need to dial in each bag. There's a slight change between each bag, so if you want consistency with your shots, make sure that you dial in and get the best grind setting for that particular bag of beans. Let's measure out our dose next. I'm going to aim for 16 grams, and the beans I'm using today are Brazil beans. They're medium roast, and it says on the bag that it's a sweet, balanced, and full-bodied espresso blend. All right, let's check out our grind settings here. So I'm going to aim for something in the espresso range here. So I'm going right towards the middle of the range. It can be a little bit of a guess, but you just have to try something. Okay, let's get our grind going. And I'm just going to give it a few seconds to get completely ground. Once the grounds stop coming out of the grinder, I'll turn it off. Okay, let's take a look at what we have. You'll want something that feels like very fine beach sand or salt. And I just want to show in my hand here kind of like what that texture looks like. Next, let's take our portafilter. I want to point out that I'm using a 16 to 18 gram capacity basket, which fits perfectly with my recipe. So I'll add my ground coffee, and I'll use a distributor tool to break up any clumps that may have formed during the grinding process. Here I'm using a Weiss distribution tool. It's also called a WDT. Now take your tamper with your thumb and your forefinger and hold your arm at a 90-degree angle. Press down firmly and keep your wrist as straight as possible. So rather than thinking about the amount of pressure in the form of a number, think about it how you would press firmly enough to compact it down until you can't anymore. The main thing is just to be consistent about how you tamp so you can more accurately adjust your grind. So let's place our portafilter in the machine. Make sure your scale is zeroed out. Okay, let's start our espresso shot. You don't want espresso to immediately start to come out. That usually means that the grind is too coarse. So usually if you start seeing espresso, you want it to be right around like the 9 or 10 second mark. It's typically a good sign for a good grind setting. Really what you want to watch for is a consistent flow and a consistent pressure if you have a gauge. So we're going to keep watching the scale until the yield reaches 36 grams. All right, I'll stop the machine, and it looked like it took 41 seconds. Okay, let's look and see how this compared to our recipe. So I dosed 16 grams in, got 37 grams out over 41 seconds. So this looks like what we were aiming for. Sometimes things don't happen right on the first try, and that's perfectly fine. So we need to make an adjustment to the grinder. Here's what you need to know. If this happens, do this instead. So if you have very little or no espresso coming out, try setting the grind setting to slightly more coarse. If you reach the desired output but in less time than you wanted, so that means it ran too fast, try adjusting the grind settings slightly finer. If you reached the desired time but had less output, so it ran too slow, try adjusting the grind setting more coarse. If you reach the desired output in more time, so it also ran too slow, try setting the grind setting to more coarse. So when you adjust your grinder, make sure you only move it a tiny amount because it gives more predictable results. If you remember anything from this video, just remember that grinding finer is usually the answer, and espresso is all about what you like. As long as it tastes good to you, that's all that matters. Thanks for watching.